Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A peaceful hilltop retreat, a bulletproof easement from 1981, and a homeowner just looking for quiet until an HOA led by a power-hungry Karen tries to seize the only access road with a fake map and a semi-truck blockade. What followed? Legal warfare, media frenzy, and sweet revenge. When I bought the place, I wasn't looking for trouble. Quite the opposite. After 20 years of crawling through property disputes, decoding ancient easement maps, and testifying in court about who owned 6 feet of dirt between two angry boomers, I wanted peace. That's what the house on the hill promised me. Isolation, quiet, and the kind of legal clarity that would make any land surveyor weep with joy. The road to my property was a clean strip of asphalt cutting between the back edge of a gated community called Oak Crest Ridge and a patch of city land that hadn't seen a mower in years. Nothing fancy. But it had one very specific feature that made me smile the first time I saw it on the deed. An easement recorded in 1981. Legally binding, filed at the county level, and rock solid. That road wasn't just a road, it was a contract written in asphalt, and I knew every inch of it better than I knew my own driveway. The house itself was modest. A 2-story craftsman with creaky floors, a wraparound porch, and a view that made coffee taste better. I spent the first few weeks setting up my workspace, updating the security system, and going through the hundreds of old maps I had archived from years of legal work. My mother moved in with me not long after. Her knees weren't what they used to be, and the slope up to the house kept her humble. We lived quietly. I didn't bother the neighbors, mostly because I had none, unless you counted the HOA across the road. At first, they left me alone, which I appreciated. Occasionally, I'd see someone walking a dog near the gated entrance. They'd glance in my direction like I was a wildlife exhibit, but no one said anything. No letters, no visits, no warnings about mailbox colors or lawn gnome violations. For a few blissful months, I thought I might actually live here in peace. Then the letters started. The first one was polite. Too polite in that way that makes your skin itch. It invited me to consider membership in the Oak Crest Ridge Homeowners Association and promised a voice in the beautification and future of our shared community. Shared. Cute. The second letter came 2 weeks later and skipped the sugar. It referenced non-conforming access usage and unregistered transit through private community infrastructure. I laughed out loud. They were talking about the easement, my easement. The third letter was practically a threat wrapped in passive aggression. As per recent review, the road leading to your property crosses into areas maintained and controlled by Oak Crest Ridge HOA. We strongly advise formalizing your relationship with the association to ensure continued access. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The law already had. Instead, I pulled out my original documents, made copies, filed a formal letter with the county recorder reaffirming the historical easement, and went back to cataloging old maps like none of this HOA nonsense existed. But deep down, I knew how this played out. I'd seen it too many times before. The only thing worse than a bored HOA board is a newly elected one with a president who used to sell real estate and thinks that makes her a war general. Her name was Karen. Of course. I was about 5 minutes from home when I saw it. At first, I thought someone had gotten lost, or maybe broken down. But as I got closer, the size and angle of the thing made it very clear this wasn't a mistake. A full-size white semi-truck was parked across the road, completely perpendicular, its trailer stretching from one side of the pavement to the other like a wall of steel. No hazard lights, no cones, just a blockade. I braked hard and stared at it. There wasn't even enough room to squeeze a bicycle past it, let alone my car. I sat there in silence, the engine idling, groceries in the back seat, a bag of ice cream slowly dying. Then I saw her. Karen. She was standing off to the side of the truck. Arms folded, sunglasses on, a thick manila folder in one hand, and that smug little smile I'd seen on courtroom witnesses who think they're about to win with a forged lease. She stepped forward, heels clicking on the asphalt like punctuation marks. "Mr. Mason," she said, voice syrupy, "we need to talk about road access." I rolled down my window. "No, we really don't." She held up the folder. HOA has completed a full review of our infrastructure, and as of last week, this road falls under Oak Crest Ridge jurisdiction. We've updated our internal map and submitted it to the municipality for recognition. I stared at her for a second, trying to process just how many laws she thought she was rewriting. You parked a semi across an active access road because you drew a new map? We're enforcing HOA policy, she said, like it was the Ten Commandments. You're welcome to use the road once you've signed the provisional access agreement and begun the application process to join the association. I laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was that short, deadpan kind of laugh that usually comes right before a blood pressure spike. You do realize I have a recorded easement from 1981 that gives me unrestricted access to this road, right? She raised an eyebrow. That's under review. I killed the engine, stepped out of the car, and walked toward her. Move the truck. Right now. Not until you sign the agreement. I looked around, half expecting this to be some elaborate prank. This is extortion and obstruction. This is policy, she repeated. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency line for the sheriff's department. 20 minutes later, a patrol cruiser rolled up. 2 deputies stepped out, one young and alert, the other middle-aged, with a face that said he regretted every career choice he'd made since high school. I explained the situation calmly, handed over my documents. Karen interrupted me mid-sentence to present her own, the freshly printed, updated map with the HOA's logo on it, and a highlighted area covering the very road in question. The older deputy looked back and forth between us, clearly unimpressed. Look, folks, he said, this seems like a civil dispute. We can't make anyone move their vehicle if they say it's their property. You'll probably have to get a court order. I turned to Karen. You heard him. You're breaking the law, and I'll see you in court. Karen just smiled wider. You'll have to walk home then. I looked at the road, looked at her, said nothing. Then I turned and walked, groceries in the trunk, melting, ice cream be damned. But as I climbed the hill back to my property, all I could think about was every inch of that road, every recorded line, every signature on that easement. I built those documents. I helped write half the standards she was now pretending didn't apply. If she wanted to fight over maps, she picked the wrong damn cartographer. I didn't sleep that night, not out of anger, though there was plenty of that, but because my brain wouldn't shut off. It was running terrain overlays, deed comparisons, and GIS layer projections in the background, like some cursed mental software that refused to quit. If Karen wanted to play the map game, then fine, we'd play. The next morning, I made coffee strong enough to qualify as a controlled substance and rolled out my old drafting table. I hadn't used it in months, hadn't needed to since switching to digital workflows, but this wasn't about work. This was personal. I pulled the original plat map from my filing cabinet, the one recorded back in 1981 when the easement was first granted to the previous owner of my property. The document had the unmistakable yellowing edges of authenticity and the official county seal embedded like a watermark. I laid it out beside Karen's glossy new HOA map that I'd photographed when the deputy was distracted. Her version was laughable. No seal, no recordation number, just some AutoCAD hack job with the HOA's logo slapped on top like it meant something. The easement on her map was gone, erased, as if it had never existed. Instead, the road was highlighted in pale blue and labeled Community Access Route, Oak Crest Ridge Internal Use Only. Cute. I fired up my desktop and pulled aerial imagery from the past 20 years. I had access to high-resolution archive data, mostly because I'd spent 2 years consulting on a federal land dispute in Montana, and I'd forgotten to cancel the data subscription, worth every penny. Year after year, image after image, the same road appeared, uninterrupted, unclaimed, connecting the main county route to my property, like a spinal cord. I cross-referenced those with the county's own GIS database. Unsurprisingly, the road was classified as a shared-use easement, with no HOA ownership. That data, unlike Karen's fantasy map, was updated and certified quarterly. But the real kicker. I dug up a zoning review request from 5 years ago, filed by Oak Crest Ridge's previous board. Back then, they'd tried to extend their boundary to include the road, and were denied. Flat out. The county had ruled that the road was legally independent, maintained via easement, and not subject to HOA regulation. Karen either didn't know or didn't care. I drafted an email to the municipal planning office, attaching my findings, and flagged it urgent. Then I submitted a formal challenge through the county portal, citing false cartographic representation and abuse of land use procedure. It was around noon when I got the call back from a planning analyst named Jerry. His tone was polite but nervous, like someone who knew they were about to step into the middle of a lawsuit. Mr. Mason, I've looked at what you submitted. Honestly, I didn't even realize the update came through. It was part of a batch submission. We just processed the map because it came from a recognized HOA. Did you verify ownership? There was a pause. No. We assumed their map reflected existing jurisdiction. They faked a boundary to seize road access. Another pause. We may have a problem. Yeah, Jerry, we really might. The next day, I woke up to a phone call from the pharmacy. They couldn't deliver my mother's arthritis meds. The courier said the road was blocked, and security refused to allow passage to unregistered vehicles. I asked if the driver explained it was medical delivery. He had. Didn't matter. The guard said it was HOA policy. I threw on my jacket and marched down the hill to the blockade. The semi-truck was gone, replaced by 4 concrete barricades and a folding guard booth that hadn't been there yesterday. A rent-a-cop in tactical sunglasses sat inside, looking way too proud of a job that involved sitting and stopping elderly medicine deliveries. I approached, trying to keep my voice steady. I live up there, I said, pointing behind me. This road is under legal easement. What the hell is this? He held up a clipboard. Only approved HOA vehicles and guests allowed. You're not on the list. I laughed. You think this is a gated community? It's a shared easement, not a country club. He shrugged. I've got orders. You can take it up with the board. I am taking it up with the board, through legal channels. For now, either move these blocks or I'll call the sheriff again. Call whoever you want. So I did, and got the same 2 deputies as before. They took one look at the barricades, shook their heads, and gave me the same line. Civil dispute. File another injunction. When I returned home, on foot again, I found my mom on the porch, looking pale and irritated. She hadn't eaten. Her pain was flaring. Her words were short. Fix this. So I did what I always do. I documented. I took photos of the blocks, the booth, the sign that had appeared overnight reading private HOA property, entry by permit only. I gathered timestamps, GPS tags, video clips from my drone circling above like a legal buzzard. I wrote everything up in a formal letter to the HOA attorney of record. Yes, I'd looked them up, and copied it to the county commissioner, zoning board, and 3 journalists who'd covered shady HOA practices before. By evening, I had an inbox full of auto replies and 1 short message from a reporter at the Pine Valley Sentinel. This real. I sent her everything. The next day, the article dropped online with the headline, HOA blocks access to private home using faked map, county officials unaware. Within hours, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Neighbors, colleagues, even an old professor from UCLA who specialized in land use law, all reaching out. The story went semi-viral on regional social media. People love a good HOA horror story. Karen's response? She doubled down. That afternoon, a flyer was taped to my mailbox. Technically mail tampering, but sure. It featured my face, a screenshot from my LinkedIn, and a paragraph accusing me of inciting conflict, refusing to join the community, and disrupting local harmony through antagonistic tactics and sensationalist media. The best part? She listed me as a former cartographer with unknown affiliations. Unknown affiliations. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee, but the pushback wasn't just paper-thin PR. That night, a neighbor from Oak Crest Ridge came by in secret. She didn't give her name, just said, I think you should see this. It was a printout of internal HOA emails, screenshots actually, forwarded from someone inside. One thread was titled Redefining Common Zones for Security and Value. In it, Karen wrote, the road behind our southern lots is a liability if left public. Incorporating it under our jurisdiction will increase perimeter control and property value. We can submit the adjusted map through fast-track protocols. No one reads those anyway. Another email from the HOA's secretary. Isn't that road still under that old easement? Karen's reply. Only if someone fights it. Let's hope Mason is too isolated to do that. That was the moment I stopped just defending. It was time to go on the offensive. By the time the article hit the front page of the Pine Valley Sentinel's Sunday edition, the gloves were off. The photo they ran was brilliant. Karen standing smugly next to the barricades, arms crossed like she was defending the Alamo. Underneath it, the headline read, Cartographer shut out by HOA's phantom border. Subtle? No. Effective? Absolutely. I didn't wait for anyone else to make the next move. Monday morning, I sat down with my attorney, Sophia Byrne. She'd been a bulldog in zoning litigation for over a decade, and when I handed her the HOA map and Karen's email printouts, she let out a single satisfied, "Oh, hell yes." We filed a request for an emergency injunction that afternoon. The filing included every last document, the original easement, satellite imagery from the last 2 decades, zoning denials from 5 years ago, and a screenshot of Karen's "no one reads those anyway" email. We also sent a formal complaint to the district attorney's office, attempted fraudulent land claim, obstruction of easement, and reckless endangerment due to the road blockade. Sophia called it one hell of a starter pack, but Karen wasn't sitting still either. Within 48 hours, a new set of signs appeared along the barricade. "Trespassing on HOA property is a criminal offense. You are being recorded." Alongside them, security cameras on flimsy aluminum tripods blinked red LEDs into the night, like knockoff sentinels. I spotted 2 unlicensed guards patrolling, guys in polo shirts with walkie-talkies and sunglasses at night. Theatrical, illegal, predictable. Then came the bombshell. A local journalist, Lisa Chen, who'd been digging into HOA filings, called me late Tuesday evening. "You're gonna love this," she said. According to county records, Oak Crest Ridge submitted their boundary update request through something called a minor jurisdictional overlay, meant for adjusting lot setbacks, not absorbing entire roads. Did they attach ownership records? Nope. Just a statement of presumed control, which the county accepted? Rubber stamped. No public hearing, no review, no challenge window. Jesus. It wasn't corruption, it was bureaucracy on autopilot. Wednesday morning, I started getting calls from neighbors on the far side of Oak Crest Ridge, people I'd never met. One was a veteran who'd been denied access by the security guard while trying to deliver firewood to a friend. Another was a teacher who used to cut through the road on her bike and now had to detour 2 miles. The HOA had overplayed its hand. With Sophia's help, I began collecting sworn affidavits, neighbors attesting to decades of road access, former HOA board members distancing themselves from Karen's stunt. Even the previous HOA president, a soft-spoken dentist named Carl, sent in a written statement confirming the road had never been part of the community's jurisdiction and attempts to claim it had been previously rejected. That afternoon, I received a visit. A black SUV with no plates pulled up to the barricade. 2 men in suits stepped out, and one approached the guard booth, while the other looked straight up at my drone, which was doing slow circles overhead. A moment later, the guard scrambled inside the booth and made a call. The suits left without speaking to me, but the message was clear. Someone was getting nervous. Sophia filed a motion to depose Karen under oath. I spent the evening digging up one more piece of evidence, an old scanned parcel map from 1981, the one drawn by hand by a retired county surveyor whose initials matched the deed's legal description perfectly. I remembered helping digitize his archive during grad school. Finding that document again felt like watching a ghost testify in my favor. The difference was, this ghost had a signature and a seal. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. on a Thursday. We walked into the county courthouse 30 minutes early. Sophia in a navy blazer radiating quiet murder, and me in what she called my respectably infuriated landowner outfit. I even ironed the shirt. That's how serious this had become. Karen was already there, seated at the far end of the room with 2 attorneys I didn't recognize, both in suits too expensive for their competence. She wore white again, like some suburban Joan of Arc, flipping through papers as if rehearsing for Broadway. The moment our eyes met, she smiled, wide and confident, like she hadn't tried to annex a damn road with a Word document. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Hargrove, opened the session with a voice that could cut through drywall. She wasn't here for nonsense. Sophia started with a simple, devastating presentation, a chronological walkthrough of the easement, the land title, the recorded plat from 1981, and the aerial photographs that showed uninterrupted road access dating back over 2 decades. She had binders, color-coded tabs, a portable projector. At one point, she pulled out a foam core board with a high-res print of the county zoning denial from 5 years ago and just left it propped against the table like it was daring someone to object. Then came the emails. Sophia read aloud Karen's exact words about fast-tracking the map change. No one reads those anyway. You could hear someone in the back of the room suck in a breath. Karen's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Karen, for her part, sat still. Her fingers twitched slightly. Her lawyers tried redirecting with a claim that the HOA was within its rights to redefine its internal structure, but Sophia didn't even let them finish. "Your Honor," she said, "they presented a fabricated map without any public hearing, jurisdictional notice, or verification of ownership, and used it to physically blockade a legal resident from accessing his own home." The judge looked at Karen's, sighed like she was staring down a raccoon that just wandered into court wearing a necktie. "Do you have any documentation of actual ownership over the road in question?" Karen stood, smoothing her blouse. "No, Your Honor, but I have my board's support and a moral duty to protect our community." "That's not evidence," Hargrove snapped. "Sit down." Then it was my turn. I walked the court through the original survey map describing the easement's exact coordinates and chain of custody from the original land deed to my current title. I showed the judge the 1981 parcel scan with the surveyor's signature, the one I digitized back in grad school. She leaned forward slightly, inspecting the notary seal like it was a sacred text. Karen's team tried one last Hail Mary, suggesting the easement had expired due to underuse. "Underuse," I repeated louder than I meant to. "I live there. I use it every day when I'm not being blocked by concrete and security guards with clipboards." A low chuckle ran through the courtroom. Even the bailiff cracked a grin. The judge didn't laugh. She just looked back down at the files, then up again with absolute finality. "This court finds that the Oak Crest Ridge Homeowners Association submitted materially misleading documents to county authorities, acted without legal standing, and unlawfully obstructed a recorded easement. Effective immediately, the HOA is ordered to remove all barriers, cease enforcement activity on the road, and formally acknowledge the right-of-way in their internal charter." She wasn't done. Furthermore, this court grants injunctive relief in favor of Mr. Mason and reserves ruling on damages pending separate proceedings. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something. She didn't respond. The courtroom emptied slowly with more than a few sideways glances in Karen's direction. I stayed seated, letting the adrenaline bleed off. Sophia patted my arm. "One more round to go," she said. "Then we finish this." I expected backlash. Karen wasn't the kind of person to fold just because a judge told her to, but I didn't expect her to go completely silent. For 3 days after the ruling, the barricades stayed up, the guard booth remained occupied, and no official acknowledgement from the HOA surfaced. It was like they were hoping I'd forget the court order if they stalled long enough. Sophia didn't stall. She filed a motion for contempt on Monday morning. That same afternoon, we got word from the county sheriff's office. Officers would be dispatched to oversee the removal of all obstructions by the end of the day. If the HOA didn't comply, equipment would be seized, and arrests would follow. By sunset, I stood at the base of the hill, watching a county truck arrive with 2 deputies and a city code compliance officer. The look on the rent-a-cop's face when they told him to get out of the booth was something I'll treasure for years. He muttered something about just following orders and disappeared without protest. The concrete blocks were dragged away with the groan of steel chains, and the booth was carted off in the back of a flatbed like a defeated chess piece. It should have ended there, but the DA had other ideas. Apparently, Sophia's criminal complaint didn't get buried under a pile of ignored filings like we'd assumed. Someone at the DA's office took a real interest, maybe because of the media attention, maybe because the whole stunt made the county look asleep at the wheel. The call came 2 days later. Karen was being charged with falsification of public records, obstruction of access to property, and conspiracy to defraud. And it got better. One of her own board members, probably smelling smoke, cut a deal and provided emails showing Karen had pressured the HOA secretary into submitting the doctored map despite knowing it lacked legal standing. The phrase, "we'll fix it later if someone complains," came up multiple times. The indictment dropped on a Friday. I was sitting on the porch, finally enjoying a quiet afternoon, when I got the text from Sophia. "She's being arrested at Monday's hearing. Dress nice." I did. Courtroom B wasn't nearly as packed this time. A few HOA members sat near the back, not making eye contact with me. Karen arrived in a muted gray blazer, face like concrete, followed by her attorney who looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. The judge reviewed the enforcement order, verified compliance, then turned to the matter of the criminal charges. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that the intent to deceive couldn't be proven, but the judge cut him off halfway through a sentence. "You're welcome to argue that at trial, but your client is being taken into custody today." The bailiff stepped forward. Karen didn't move for a second, just stared ahead, blank, and then slowly stood up. No shouting, no theatrics. Just that final silent collapse of someone who'd convinced herself the rules never applied to her. As the handcuffs clicked into place, I felt nothing vindictive. Just the strange clarity of watching justice actually happen without shortcuts, without screaming, just methodically. Afterward, as we walked out, Sophia leaned in. "Think she'll take a plea?" I shrugged. "Depends if her lawyer still wants to practice law next year." By the time Karen's plea deal hit the news, guilty on 2 misdemeanor counts, 12 months probation, barred from holding any HOA position in the state, Oakcrest Ridge was in full retreat mode. Their newly elected interim board issued a letter of apology so carefully worded it probably passed through 3 lawyers and a crisis consultant. It included phrases like regrettable miscommunication, oversight in process, and my personal favorite, unexpected infrastructural consequences. They also voted unanimously to amend their charter, permanently recognizing the historic easement as external to the community's jurisdiction. I framed that page. But even with the barricades gone and my legal victory complete, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been one phone call away from being locked out of my own life. If I'd been someone else, someone without the background, the resources, the damn paper trail, Karen would have won. And the worst part, no one would have noticed. So I made a decision. A month after the court ruling, I filed for a permit to build a new access road, entirely independent from the HOA's territory. It meant purchasing a small slice of undeveloped land to the north, dense with brush and stone. But I didn't care. I hired a crew, got the grading done, and spent a week personally overseeing the paving. My boots were caked in mud by the end of it, but watching that fresh blacktop curve around the hill, like a lifeline, made every blister worth it. I registered the new road as a private easement in perpetuity, irrevocable and non-transferable, locked to my parcel with language so airtight it could survive nuclear war. No HOA, no committee, no neighbor with too much free time would ever touch it. At the new entrance, I installed a hand-carved wooden arch. Nothing fancy, just clean lines, solid beams, and a sign overhead that read, "Private way, not HOA business. Not ever." It became a minor local landmark. Some folks took selfies with it. A real estate blog even did a write-up about the man who mapped his way out of HOA hell. My mother loved that one. She printed it and stuck it on the fridge. And then, almost quietly, life went back to normal. The reporters moved on. The lawsuits ended. Even the HOA, under new management, stopped making noise. They held a neighborhood BBQ and mailed me an invite. I tossed it in the trash unopened. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. They need to stay burned, so nobody tries to cross them again. Instead, I focused on things that mattered, restoring the old stone wall behind the garden, digitizing a forgotten set of land plats from the county archive, teaching my mom how to use the espresso machine without flooding the kitchen. Peace returned, slow but steady. One morning, I got a letter from a local university asking if I'd guest lecture on the case for their urban planning students. I said yes. Not because I wanted to relive it, but because maybe, just maybe, someone in that room would end up on the other side of a zoning desk someday, and they'd remember what happened when someone tried to redraw reality with a Sharpie and a God complex. I still keep the original 1981 easement framed in my office, not out of pride, though I earned every inch of that road, but as a reminder, maps matter, boundaries matter, and the people who draw them better damn well know what they're doing.